Hello friends, my name is Marines. My favorite read in 2015 was Imperfect Light by Benjamin Alire Sanz. I wouldn't say that picking a favorite was easy for me either. There was a top 3 or 4 that I was choosing between, but at the end of the day, this story about a man struggling to deal with the tragedies of his past hit me in a very personal way, and not only did it affect my emotions, but Alire Sanz is one of the best authors I've had the privilege of reading this year. His writing manages to be poetic and deceptively simple at the same time, and I know that this book impacted me in a way that is beyond the scope of just 2015, and for that reason it is my favorite book of 2015.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm Daniella from Daniella Books. My favorite book this year was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. You can take almost any aspect of this book, whether it's the characters, the setting, the plot consistency, and just grasp it in your hands and look at it from all angles and it'll come up totally smooth. But really quickly, I want to give a special love letter to the characters because when I'm picking a book, I know that's the first thing I want to know about. And these characters have the 3 F's that I'm looking for. They are flawed, they are fun, and they are fleshed out. Not only that, but they actually make mistakes. Like, there are moments where you will get annoyed by characters. And guess what? Ernest Cline punishes those characters for acting stupidly. That's right, folks, we're not in YA land anymore.
Hi, I'm Kayla from Heroic Pages. My favorite read from this year was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I really enjoyed this book. I read it back in August for Booktubeathon as a recommendation to read someone else's favorite book, and so I read this, and I really loved the world that it took place in. Not necessarily the real world, but the virtual one and the endless possibilities of that world. And I just thought it would be so cool to be in that world and experience virtual reality that way.
My favorite book this year has been Outlander by Diana Gabaldon.
My favorite book of 2015 was Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. I was pleasantly surprised by this book. There was a lot of hype about it. I heard that it was going to become a TV series, which always manages to draw me in. And I was surprised how much I really loved it. I don't typically read historical fiction. Anything too serious that involves actual wars and kings and strategy is not my cup of tea, but there was just something about this book that I had to keep reading. I loved the characters. They were riveting and it was just so exciting, and it was a great page turner. I think all those characters will live in my heart forever, because if you were supposed to love them, you loved them, and if you were supposed to hate them, you loved to hate them.
Hey guys, it's Hannah from A Clockwork Reader. My favorite book of 2015 should come as no surprise to any of you who have watched my channel, because I honestly can't stop raving about it, and it is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. From the minute that I finished reading this book, it automatically became my favorite book that I have ever read, and therefore my favorite book I read this year. The atmosphere in this book, the characters, the storytelling, the writing, everything about it is just absolutely perfect to me, and everything I could ever ask for out of a novel.
Hello everyone, my name is Sarah and I vlog over at the channel Sarah Ann Reads. So my favorite new read of the year was Peace Like a River by Leif Enger. It is a literary fiction story about an asthmatic little boy named Ruben from the Midwest, and when his older brother is accused of murder and goes on the run, Ruben, his dad, and his older sister go on an adventure across the country to find him, and in the process learn a whole lot about faith and life and family and miracles, and it is just an absolutely exquisite book. I read a lot of books this year, and this particular one I read very early on in the year. It was either January or February, and it has stuck with me the entire year. Like, if anything that I read this year is an example of books or literature being art, this book, hands down. The writing style is so fluid and so lovely, and just the best way I can think to describe it is like melted butter. Like, it's just gorgeous.
Hi everyone, I'm Rincey from Rincey Reads, and my favorite book of the year was Signal to Noise by Silvia Moreno Garcia. It follows these teenagers in 1988 in Mexico City who discover that they have magical powers, or they can harness magic by listening to specific records or songs. So if you are someone who liked The Magicians, and or if you liked High Fidelity, I feel like this is just a really great young adult novel that just completely blew me away and gave me all of the feels.
Hi everyone, my name is Leia over at Hi I Love Books. My favorite book for 2015 is hands down A Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This is just everything that I look for in a fantasy novel. There's action, adventure, amazing world building, and amazing storytelling. My favorite part about this book is definitely the world and the world building. We're not just getting descriptions of the land, but we're also getting a description of the culture and the lore and the history, and I just love it so much.
Hello everybody, my name is Lily, I'm from Sweet Love Books. I had a really hard time picking my favourites of 2015. There's just a top 3 that I have such a hard time distinguishing between, but in the end I made my decision. And my favourite book of 2015 was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is an adult literary post-apocalyptic novel that came out in 2014, but I read it this year while I was travelling, and this book was just beautiful. The writing is just so beautiful and the story is so complex and just weaves all of these characters' lives together. It has a huge cast of characters and they're all just interconnected in all of these ways. It definitely wasn't the book that I expected, but it was everything I kind of subconsciously wanted, and I highly recommend you guys pick this book up. It's much better going into it not really knowing much about it, and if you have this book sitting on your TBR and you haven't read it, I really recommend you guys go pick it up.
My name is Amanda and I vlog on the channel Musical Poem. The best book I read in 2015 is Elizabeth Wine's Codename Verity. It is the story of a sensational teen. And that's all I will say about that, because it's kind of a book that builds upon itself. But just to read slowly, pay attention to everything, and just enjoy the story. No other book I read this year left me reeling the way I was after I read the book, and no other book I read this year has left me thinking about it the way that I have, because it just captivated me so, and it's so wonderful when a book does that.
Hi everyone, I'm Trina from the channel Between Chapters. My favorite read of the year by far was The Martian by Andy Weir. Personally, I just really love survival stories, and this was no exception to that. The great thing about this book is that Mark just deals with the situation. He doesn't bring a lot of emotion to the table, which for me allowed me to impose my own emotions into this story. I really internalized the situation, which made it for a very heavily emotional read for me, because I was putting myself into his shoes and imagining what I would have done if I were stranded on Mars, which was not much. I probably would have died immediately. But I loved also the links that this book shows humanity going to for one of its own. The last line of this book was incredible for me. It felt like such a real story that I am not entirely convinced that Mark Watney is not up there on Mars waiting to come home.
This isn't a new book by any means, but I read it only this year, and it's The Miseducation of Cameron Post by Emily Danforth, and I really love this book. I mean, it's not an easy read, far from it. It deals with some heavy stuff, not just coming out, but also losing your parents and being sent to a Christian conversion camp, stuff like that. It's not easy, but the way it was written was just so good, and also I could relate to it so much.
Hey guys, it's Kirsty from Melbourne on My Mind. My favourite book of the year is also a young adult contemporary novel, and that is Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. I read this book back in April and it went straight to like absolute favourite status, and it hasn't moved from there for the rest of the year, so this is absolutely my #1 pick for 2015. It tells the story of a teenage boy named Simon who is gay but not out until he leaves his email logged in on one of the school computers and somebody finds out that he is gay and starts blackmailing him. Sounds a little bit weird and creepy, but it was totally and utterly adorable and I loved every single second of it. Becky Albertalli is an absolutely magnificent writer, and it's really hard to believe that this is her debut novel because it is just so freaking glorious.
Hi, I'm Lace from my book channel Awful, and my favorite book of this year was Amy and Roger's Epic Dieto by Morgan Matson. I am a big contemporary lover and I read a lot of contemporary, but this one just stands out. The character development in this story was amazing. I love the relationship and just, you know, the build up to the final thing. What I also loved about this book were the receipts and the pictures and all the things written extra, you know, extra things about the states they were going through.
Hey guys, my name is Raul from the channel Latin Lector. So the favorite book that I read in the year 2015 was The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz, and this is a beautifully tragic story of Oscar Wilde and kind of his family and the kind of coming of age and self-discovery. It was absolutely beautiful. I absolutely love Junot Diaz and will definitely be reading more by him in the next year.
Hi, I'm Arthur and my channel is Chapter Select. I ended up picking a book that I read very early on this year. I was just like innately drawn to it. It's a YA book and I just absolutely loved it, and that is These Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. It tells the story of 3 generations of a family, explaining all the way down a family tree to Ava Lavender. She is a girl born with wings. But the thing that really stuck with me was just the way that the story was told. It was written so beautifully. There was a lot of beautiful description, but most of all, it read really like a storybook, like some sort of fairy tale that was just really beautiful. I thought the characters were great, I thought the build-up was great, and I thought that it had this very eerie tone. I really love when a book has a pervasive tone that just like really sets you in a mood for the entire read, because it really hooks you and grabs you, and this book definitely did that. Strange and beautiful is how I'd describe it, honestly, and I think that this book really fulfills its title.
Hi, my name is Kayla Ring from my channel named Kayla Ring. I personally like to start on a positive note, so I'm going to be talking about my favorite read of 2015, or at least one of my favorite reads, and that is going to be Lies We Tell Ourselves by Robin Talley. This is a YA historical fiction that follows 2 main characters, and the 2 main characters are on opposing sides of the civil rights movement. This takes place in 1959 in a fictional town in Virginia. So one main character, Sarah, is an African-American senior who is integrating into a previously all-white high school, and the other main character, Linda, is a white senior who goes to this previously all-white high school that is now open to integration. Both girls end up having to work on a school project together, and in the process of that, they start to develop romantic feelings for each other. So this book just discusses some really important themes like sexuality, racism, religion, why we believe what we believe, whether that's an influence of family, society, personal choice, sometimes a mix of all that. And Robin Talley just did a really fantastic job of just kind of discussing these themes in a way that isn't shoving it down your throat and saying you have to believe this or you're wrong. It's just this really beautiful piece of literature with great characters, fantastic discussions, and just this really realistic setting.
Hi everyone, so I'm Tom from tomfromhr.com. The one that I really liked was Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that really wrong. If you were to explain the plot of Remains of the Day badly, you would say it's about an English butler who takes a country drive trying to convince an old employee to come back. But it's about so much more than that. I mean, during this kind of drive, he reminisces about his history as a butler, his relationship with his father, and as a butler, he's done amazing things as part of he was part of a group that tried to appease World War II, essentially, like you know, the lord he was serving was, essentially. And it's interesting reading it all through his perspective, and it's a really fascinating book, and just the prose was just, I felt reading it like Kazuo Ishiguro could write a phone book and I would happily read it. At its core, as I said, it's about a country drive. Really, it's about work, it's about duty, it's about honor, it's about service, it's about class, it's about World War II, it's about love. It's about what you do with your time and how you choose to spend your time.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. Normally I film on my channel book chats. I cheated and chose 2. Please don't hurt me. I couldn't not choose 2, and I'm gonna explain why. I think that these books kind of fit together. They're both nonfiction, and they both deal with topics that are like a huge part of our lives and reality in at least the United States, and some of them are just a reality of the human condition. Things that we do not talk about enough, and both of these books give you a better handle and a grasp and more ammunition to talk about these things more. So the first of those that I read this year, which was so amazing, is Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. Atul Gawande is a public health surgeon and is the author of several really great nonfiction books. This is his most recent. This book is about the fact that we as humans are all mortal and will all die, but the Western medicine, and especially the American medical system, does not know how to deal with the fact that we are all going to die. And specifically what he talks about is that physicians are taught that they need to cure people, that they need to fix problems, but you cannot fix mortality. And he gives you a great framework for very specifically and very personally dealing with people in your life who are nearing the end of their lives, and how to deal with their end of life care and make sure that their ideas of what the end of their life will be like are met. And then the second book is about a really a topic that is not quite as inevitable as death, but is really present in our lives and we do not talk about. It is about rape and rape culture, and the book is Missoula by Jon Krakauer. This book is about a town, Missoula. It's a college town where there were some high-profile rape cases that got into the news. There was an article written online calling it the rape capital of the United States, but Jon Krakauer makes it very clear that this city is actually average, so that statistically they're average for a city their size and the number of rapes that occurred are reported. And it is just a masterful look at how we talk about things like consent and rape and sexual assault in the context of a relationship or out of the context of a relationship. This book should come with a huge trigger warning. It is not lewd or lascivious, but it does go into detail about what happens to the women who are profiled and interviewed in it. Do not go into reading this thinking that it will not be difficult, because it will. Like, I think if you are a human being who has feelings and is not a sociopath, this will be a difficult book for you to read, but I also think it's very important.
Thank you to all of my lovely volunteers and participants. All of their information will be linked down in the description. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. I'm always putting collaborations together this way. I have 2 more in the works, so if you want to be involved in a collaboration like this, please follow me on Twitter. Twitter is a place where I organize all of these things and ask for volunteers, so if you want to be involved, you can watch out for the next time I ask for volunteers on Twitter.